And welcome back for another Built to Win podcast episode. And today we're talking about the fortune is in the follow-up. And if you're new to this podcast, we talk about marketing, we talk about sales, and we always have a phase segment. So, Brent, what are we talking about today with fortune is in the follow-up?
Yeah, you brought up one of them already. It's the follow-up, right? Whether or not you're staying in front of your client, also referred to as nurturing. And during that process, understand you're still building a brand. And more importantly, I think the biggest mistake people make is they think that they have to do all of this manually, where they have to make all the phone calls, all the texts, all the emails. And there's plenty of CRM systems out there that allow you to automate that process and stay in front of people as much as possible. The companies that stay visible are certainly the companies that win.
Yeah, well, we're excited to get going, and thanks for bringing that up. So we've got a lot to cover today. But first, I want to talk a little bit about, we're going to recap a couple of episodes that we've already done that I think are relevant for this. You know, we talk a lot, and again, this podcast is marketing, sales, and faith. This particular episode on the fortune is in the follow-up would be considered under the sales category, right? So this is more sales process. And our last episode, if you got a chance to watch it, was really about don't send an estimate, present in person. We got really deep into the sales process. And, one of the things we talked about in the sales process is, setting that meeting and following up really quick. And we've got a lot of data that we talked about last time, and we'll get a little deeper into this time, but you've got to not only follow up and set that appointment and make sure you're getting back to the form fills and those calls right away. But what we're talking about today is what happens after you present. So the last step in the sales process is you present your solution, or you present an estimate if you're given a quote, and you typically want to do that in person. But what happens when they don't come on board? What happens when I got to think about it, right? What do you do then? And that is really the purpose of this episode and what we want to talk about. And so there's two follow-ups. It's a follow-up when you get a potential prospect to reach out to you, right? You've got to set that meeting. Today, we're going to talk about the follow-up after you've presented to your prospect and you haven't closed them. So to bring that into context. So that's what we're going to talk a little bit about today. Brent, I don't know if you have anything to add to that, and we can just jump right into the meat and potatoes of this thing.
Yeah, let's jump in.
All right. Well, I put together, a lot of questions. When it comes to follow-up, one of the things that you have to do, and Brent, you've put a lot of time to this on the operations side, but, you spend so much money with a salesperson and maybe marketing dollars and try to get leads and try to get leads and try to get leads. But do you have your, we call it the back office or your operations. Do you have that? Do you have a process built in? I just wrote down some things here. Do you know what happens when someone calls you? Right? Who answers the phone? Do you have a dedicated person that answers the phone? Do you have some questions, right, to determine if they fit your avatar or what we call your ideal customer profile? How long does it take you to get an estimate back? How fast can you get those proposals out? Again, you can go back and listen to some previous episodes. We're not big advocates here at JBX of just emailing a proposal and hoping they get back to you. And I talked about in our intro, a lot of times if you do that, you're just going to get ghosted, right? And then, do you know what leads are good? And Brent, why don't you give a recap of us of really, we've talked about it. It's okay to say no to a potential prospect. Do you want to talk a little bit about and recap what an avatar is or an ideal client profile?
Yeah, we defined that a little bit last time, but I think the important thing to keep in mind is you want to have a relationship with your customer, whether that's short term, long term. You kind of define what that is, but you want to have a personality profile that fits in culturally with your company. And then also somebody that, is going to trust you and you can in turn trust them and have that long-term relationship. So both reputation and your deliverability is intact. I think a lot of times we decide we're just going to take on any client, and those type of relationships never last very long. And they also, for a lot of the home service businesses out there, you want that advocate that you can bring on board that you know is going to share their story with others, and kind of become a personal salesperson and referral person for you. Because I think a lot of leads in that home service space come from the word of mouth referrals.
Yeah, that you're exactly right. So, during the sales process, and you can again listen to previous episodes, you want to define your ideal customer profile. But what we want to talk about is you've determined that you do want to work with a potential client. They fit your avatar, they fit your ICP, and you've presented to them, and they decided to not come on board. What do you do then? And that's really what we're going to talk about today. So let's get into that. First, a few statistics on following up after you present. Did you know? And we can certainly get you the references because a lot of this data is out here and it's pretty common sense. But did you know 80% of sales requires 5 or more follow-ups? We've seen it, 10, 12 times, right? Where you just got to continue to follow up. You present and you got to stay in touch. And it's not that they don't like you. It's not that they don't want to do business with you, but you know how it is. People, we're busy. Everyone's busy. It's like, oh, I'll get back to Jonathan. I'll get back to Brent, right? So you can't quit. And most people quit after 1 or 2 attempts and they just move on. And that is just not good for your close ratio. So the point of this being is multiple, or the majority of buying decisions happen after about the third or fourth contact, right? So there's multiple touches. You've got to stay in touch. You just don't present, talk to them once or twice, and then and move on, right? So why don't you talk about um, and moving on, why don't you talk about a client that had been following us for 18 months on social media, and we got a call. I don't want to say out of the blue, but it's like, hey, I've been following you, and I'm ready to do business with you guys.
Yeah, we had a meeting probably close to a year and a half ago with a landscaping client, and the timing wasn't right for him at that point, and we built him into our CRM system, which is called Go High Level, which we'll talk about a little bit later in the segment. But basically, it's an automated follow up. We send newsletters out of there and just basically check in periodically. We know the buying cycle for a marketing client can be up to 1 to 3 years. And without that system in place, we wouldn't have had an opportunity to earn that business. And then the other thing is, we'll talk about this as well as, but building your brand, right? And being out there on social media with posts, whether it be LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, or any number of channels that are out there, you've got to continue building your brand because those prospective clients are still watching and still researching. And once they get to the point where they're ready to make the decision, you've established and built that relationship over time. There's a good chance they're going to come back to you ready to buy without really even asking any questions. In fact, this particular individual came back and said, "Hey, I think I'm ready to go. Has anything changed? Has the price changed?" And we were able to sign him up within 2 days of him reaching back up out to us. So that whole entire nurture process led a client back to us, which was a very, very easy close. And more importantly, that long term relationships already started a year and a half ago. And we know that that's going to be a really, really solid client for us.
They're always watching. That's what we've learned in this business, building it the last 3.5 years, is people are always watching what you're doing. And if you don't think that you're posting, it's a lot of work, and you think that you're posting on LinkedIn and maybe Facebook and some of these other social media channels. I mean, we just started getting active on Alignable and TikTok, and we've learned that you've got to be on every channel that your customers are on, which is pretty much every one of them. I mean, we've got a lot of people that we're not on Pinterest, but we're looking at getting on Pinterest as well. So you've got to be everywhere that your clients are. And I think, Brent, what if we just stopped, right? Hey, it's not working out. And we stopped posting after 6 months. Hey, we're not getting any business, or It's not working, you know. And why don't you talk a little bit about the algorithm? I think this is a huge point, and I don't want to get too far off the beaten path, but didn't Google just come out with a new update that it's going to incentivize people to post on Facebook and Instagram?
Yeah, exactly. The obviously SEO is changing considerably, and everybody out there now doing searches, you're seeing that AI summary at the top of Google, and they are starting to reward all businesses that are actually posting on different social channels. In fact, rewarding it so much that they're actually starting to share that social post on the Google Business profile. And that's a very very dynamic change for Google. They never in the past had done that. We've been posting social for our clients for a couple of years now. We
Yeah.
knew that it was a factor, but Google just basically um, verified that it's definitely a factor and it's going to be a huge, huge ranking factor for home service businesses going forward.
Well, and I know we've always analyzed it and we're looking, hey, is this worth it? You know, because it's an expense for our clients to do that. And we're like, hey, are they getting a return on it? And as much as, you know, and you're a data freak, right? Is we absolutely want to have a return on investment for our clients. But sometimes it's hard to track as much as we want to track everything in ROI for our clients. It's really hard to track it, but you just have to believe in the process, right? And just continue to do it. And we talk a lot about the J curve and getting off the runway. And it's kind of like, hey, no one's watching me, all this work I'm doing behind the scenes. So, you know, I just think about what would happen if we would have quit posting and done all that stuff after 6 months. And, you know, we assume nobody's watching, but, you know, I'm going out and about and starting to see people say, hey, I'm seeing your guys' stuff on LinkedIn. I'm seeing your guys' stuff. So stick to a strategy, stay the course. And I guess that's a nice segue into our next segment, which is build your brand and stay visible. Do you want to talk a little bit about some of the channels that we're using, and including this one, Brent, on how we're being visible out in I guess, the universe or the social media universe?
Yeah, for sure. And I think this is really, really a personal decision on where you want to be. But the reality is you want to be where your potential prospects and or customers are hanging out, and you have to identify that ideal customer profile, figure out where they're hanging out, and then make sure you're there as much as you possibly can be. At JBX, obviously, we're doing this podcast. We do a webinar. We post on both LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. We do a monthly newsletter and obviously nurture and follow up via our Go High Level CRM software. And that whole process, obviously very, very time consuming, but we know that's important. Not only in education, educating our existing clients, but potentially capturing new prospects as well. And depending again on your business, all of those channels may fit in perfectly, or you may go a different channel because that's again where your customers are hanging out. But that's what works for us currently.
And you bring up a great point, and just to bring this into context, why do you want to build your personal brand, right? So this is called Fortune, or this podcast is called Fortune in the Follow Up, and what we've done, and it's worked, is if we have a prospect, I'm friending those prospects on LinkedIn, and I'm friending them on Facebook currently, right? I'm not super active on Instagram. But then you know what happens is they get to see you're posting family stuff, then you're maybe posting some work stuff, so you get to be friends with your prospects, and then you can comment. At a minimum, I want you to, if you're a business owner, or entrepreneur, or a sales rep in this, listen to this podcast, and you've got a prospect and they're a business owner, follow their business page. If you know, so if you're a B2B and you're listening to this, go follow their LinkedIn business page and follow their Facebook business page, and you can comment on that. Also, again, follow their personal page, and there's nothing wrong with comment, because then you get to build up a friendship. They see your posting, you become more human. So um, I think
Yeah,
that's very important.
our internal SEO strategist Joshua shared with us the other day that the number of posts per week or per month, whether you do 3 or 1 per week, doesn't matter. It really comes down to consistency. And we 100% agree with that. Whatever you're doing, stay consistent with it. Both your prospects are paying attention to that. And then Google is also paying attention to that and rewarding those companies that are consistent, getting consistent reviews on their Google profile, responding consistently to all the reviews on their profile, posting, whether it be 1, 2, 3, 4 times per week. Consistency is what matters. Again, not only to Google, but your prospects as well. If you shut down 3, 4 months into doing all of this and you stop doing it, and you have one of these prospects that has $100,000 outdoor living opportunity, and they go to your website, they go to your profile, and everything's kind of halted, they're going to kind of wonder what's happening with your company, and probably choose one of those other companies that provided a quote and is staying consistent with those things. So whatever you do, just start and then stay consistent with it, and don't commit to more from building a brand standpoint that you know you can stay consistent with.
Yeah, I mean, marketing is it's really not about getting everyone to buy today, as much as we want everyone to buy today, but it's about being remembered when they're ready to buy, right? So it's like, "Oh my gosh, I have this landscaping project coming up and ABC Landscaping." I'm friends with the owner over there. He just posted this beautiful backyard hardscape, softscapes project with a pool that they did. I'm gonna call those guys. So yeah, that's the reason behind the madness is build your brand because people are watching, and if you don't get a client to come on board right away, they're still going to follow you, and you want to stay relevant. So,
And that's
uh,
all about staying engaged during their natural decision making process. Staying engaged with follow up and then staying engaged on the social channels as well.
yeah. So how do you stay engaged? And the next topic in this is a CRM. So Brent, why don't you explain what a CRM is for some of maybe the newer business owners, and what is a CRM and how you use it, and we'll jump into
Yes.
that. I think it's a great
Yes.
segue.
Yeah, so CRM, customer relationship management, is what it stands for. And essentially what that is a database of either existing customers and or prospects that allow you to manage communication effectively and stay in front of them. And, there's many of them out there. We use a product called Go High Level. There's HubSpot, there's Salesforce, which is typically a mid to enterprise level product, and Zoho, and the list goes on and on and on. Certain industries have specific CRMs that work directly with them. A lot of the contractors, home service businesses have specific products that make sense for their businesses specifically to help schedule techs and things like that. But whatever it is, you have to have one. If you have any deal flow at all and any prospects, you really have to have a CRM to manage that process and outreach to stay in front of the people.
Yeah, and for those of you listening, you won't be able to see this, but if you're watching on YouTube, I'm holding up a yellow Post-it note, compliments of 3M, and that's a whole nother story. They were the inventors of the Post-it note. I'm holding up a Post-it note. This used to be our CRM. I'm going back like 30 years ago. We didn't have any CRMs back when we got going in business, So that's how we used to track things. You'd have you'd write down on a piece of paper or a spreadsheet your funnel, or if someone took a call, you would write it down on a Post-it note. And we still use them, and I still have them on my desk today. But you really have to, as Brett mentioned, you really have to have every single lead go into your CRM. And we don't have the time to get into it today, but then you can set up the nurture sequence, like Brent mentioned, the newsletters and things like that. So, um, it helps create immediate response too. So if you get into like high level and HubSpot and some of these other ones, there's some pretty nice tools. Like if you get an email that you can respond, and you talked about text. That's something that we're looking at, right? If we don't answer the call right away, that they'll get a text back, and that's one of the features that we like about Go High Level. So we're in the trenches with you guys, and we're just trying to communicate some of the things that we're seeing out in the business community, and that text callback is something I think we have got to get installed right away. So, all right, we'll keep moving along. Anything else to add on the CRM?
No, I don't think so. I think one thing to add, that you used to use, and I think this is important. One advantage of having the CRM is when you do, in fact, if you do email a quote or email a follow up, the one huge advantage of the CRM is you can track whether or not they've even opened that email, right? So if you've sent
Yeah.
5 or 6 emails to somebody and they haven't opened a single one, probably your next contact or outreach shouldn't be another email. Maybe it's a phone call and or a text. And I think it's important to identify the best line of communication with that prospective client.
Yeah.
Make sure you follow that as much as possible because we talk about this all the time, Jonathan, that we keep sending emails to, certain contractors that we work with and they're out in the field all day. They're not sitting in front of a desk looking at email and responding to it, right? So again,
Yeah.
knowing your customer, but know your customer by asking those questions and then utilize what they told you to do from a follow-up standpoint. You got a far better opportunity of reaching them.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And I think a good point there is, if you're emailing them and they're not opening it, you can tell that, then you've got to try a different channel. And you can text them, you can email them, but don't ever give up. And that's where, as we slide into, our last segment, it's, never stop the nurture sequence, right? So don't ever stop nurturing your prospects until they tell you to just never call them, right? Or they resubscribe or they take you off the do not call list, right? And you get yourself in trouble. You don't want that. But again, and I put it down, we referenced it earlier, they may not buy today, they may not buy next month, maybe it's next season, right? Maybe they put together you put together a landscaping quote or an a generator quote for someone or a panel quote if you're an electrician, and maybe they don't have the money right now, but you were nice enough and you kept following up and you kept giving the newsletter. And you know what? Um, you know, I'm kind of dating myself, but what industry always did a really great job of nurturing? And I don't know if you want to guess. I'll just tell you so we don't blow a whole bunch of time. But the real estate agents, I remember you'd get the magnet and then you get the baseball schedule and then you'd get the calendar. And we were always, my mom's friend was a real estate agent and we were always getting trinkets from them. So I kind of miss those days of the promotional specialties. I know McLeod did a great job of that, right? We were always dropping off candy bars and trinkets and all sorts of great stuff. So depending on budget, if you've got some of those fun things that you can send out to your client, I think that's always cool too. And the other thing that we've launched, and this is not a sales segment, but we have handwritten uh, direct mail. So we have a robot now where you can do a handwritten postcard and send that out. This is again not a sales pitch, but the point is you can do newsletters, you can do social media that we talked about. Brent, you talked up reactivation or retargeting. Why don't you talk just real briefly what that is?
Yeah, so a lot of home service businesses have a database either of old clients or prospects that you presented to, and you've kind of allowed those to go dormant, right? A landscape company, maybe you did jobs 5, 10, even 15 plus years ago, haven't had any contact with them at all. There's a great opportunity to do database reactivation and get back in front of those people, whether it be like Jonathan said, handwritten mailers, newsletters, emails, even text outreach to see if they have any projects coming up. I think about landscaping a lot because we have a lot of landscaping clients, and one of the things we do a lot in the spring is target homeowners that have graduation parties coming up, right?
Yeah.
They bought a house when their kids were little 10, 15 years ago, haven't done a single thing to landscaping. Now they're having all these people over to their house. So they all get either a refresh or a complete new landscaping job done, just in time for the grad party. And so, like I said, maybe you did something from 10, 12 years ago. Now they have a grad party coming up, whether it be a refresh or a complete, new outdoor living area. It's a great opportunity to reactivate them and get them back into the funnel
Yeah, and people talk. Right? You're at
for
grad
sure.
parties and things like that. People talk, hey, who'd you use for your landscaping? Who'd you use for your generator, your panel, things like that. So people talk. All right. Well, let's wrap this up. There's three quick takeaways. that we want to share with you, and I'll run through them real quick. Is takeaway number one is follow up more than you think, right? Just keep following up. Don't ever stop. Don't always nurture. Number two, get every lead into your CRM. And if you don't have one, just start with an Excel spreadsheet. You can get free trials with Go High Level. If you want more information on Go High Level, we're an authorized dealer. Got my shirt on today, my high level shirt, but there's HubSpot, there's a million CRMs out there. So make sure everything gets into CRM. Um, the other thing is just like I said, never stop nurturing. So like I mentioned earlier, stay visible long enough for them to trust you, and just and don't quit. I don't know if you have anything to add on those three takeaways, Brent.
Yeah, I think the
But
only
I
thing
just
I'll add
never.
is people may
Yeah.
be asking the question is, how much is too much or how much should I follow up? Obviously, y- buying decisions are made based on emotion, and sometimes those emotions are reactive and sometimes they're proactive. Obviously, if you're selling furnaces and somebody's furnace dies in January in Minnesota, that's going to be a reactive decision. Those decisions are going to be quick, but the decision's going to be quick, and your follow up better be really, really quick as well because they have an urgent need for what you're selling. Still may be high ticket, but based on the reactive nature of it, they're going to close fairly quickly. And then the higher ticket items, whether it's an outdoor living, $100,000 outdoor living, that whole process can take 12 to 18 months. And how often should you follow up with them? Again, it goes back to identifying how often the customer wants to be followed up with. Did you identify what their timeline is? And then make sure your nurture system is set up to align with what they requested. And that includes both the channel that you're reaching out to them and then the timeline. But I don't think it's out of question to follow up, at least 3 to 5 times in that first 30 days. If somebody tells you
Yeah.
their buying decision is going to be made within 60 days, you want to be in front of them. Most likely your competitor isn't, and I would suggest doing whatever you can just not to alienate them.
Yeah. And you put a lot of time into that estimate or proposal, and you put a lot of, like I said, effort into that. Do not be afraid. You believe in your product, right? You believe in what you're selling, and you've got a lot of confidence in your company. Don't be ashamed to follow up and be on your heels. This is something that you've got to be proactive in. And I think with that, we'll wrap up here. As we talked about in the beginning, this podcast is we want to focus on three different areas: marketing, sales, and faith. And with that, we're going to leave you with some scripture that I think is very relevant to this podcast. And I'm going to quote Galatians 6:9, and I'll read this for you. Let us not grow weary of doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. Let us not grow weary of doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. I want to thank you on behalf of my co-host Brent Killen and the team at Built to Win and JBX Strategies. Thanks for joining. And if you like this, you got some relevant information, or you like this podcast, don't hesitate to subscribe and like and comment below. We're curious if there's a topic that you want to hear, that you're interested in. Shoot us a note. We'd love to respond to you and see if we can't have you on as a guest too as well. So thanks for joining, and we'll see you next time.